Welcome to the 7th Hands-on Agile webinar. I'm your host, Stefan Wolpes, and today we will be talking about sprint anti-patterns. So, sprint anti-patterns, we're moving forward. We already covered the sprint planning in webinar 5, which is available on the YouTube channel. And we will talk about the sprint itself, what could possibly go wrong, right? So let's start with a short refresher from the Scrum guide. The purpose of the sprint is to deliver a potentially releasable product increment at the end. It doesn't have to be released, but it should be in a state, meaning definition of done. But the product owner could decide to ship it actually to a productive system and get it out into the wild to the customers. So it's a time box of less than a month, but it shouldn't be shorter than a week. So we have 1 week to approximately 4 weeks. If it's longer, complexity may grow and the risk is getting higher, and probably the purpose of the product might change. If it's shorter than a week, you really have a nasty overhead with all the ceremonies. Very often you will find that teams decide to have some sort of a 2-week sprint, which typically works out nicely. You are not to make any changes to the sprint backlog that would endanger the sprint goal. If the sprint goal would be endangered by whatever circumstance, it might be the calling of the product owner to cancel the sprint, which actually is something very rare. So, but don't make any changes to the sprint log that might endanger the sprint goal, which does not mean that there is no room for negotiating the scope of the sprint goal and clarifying it as soon as the development team has learned more. The idea is that you do not prepare everything 100% upfront. That would be a micro waterfall planning. You're good to go for the maybe 2, 3, 4 days. And then while you do this, you continue learning about what you actually want to build. And under no circumstance, the quality goals are supposed to decrease. So no cutting corner whatsoever to meet the sprint goal by the end of the sprint. It's very common that people say, yeah, it's working on my machine. Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't integrate it to the rest. I couldn't merge the code back. I don't know whether it's working with the rest of the other changes to the code base. It's a demo version. No, it's not supposed to be shipped. What we want to have is a done product increment at the end of the sprint. Done in the sense it is shippable to the customers. So now that we cleared that, let's start with my dirty dozen of sprint anti-patterns. Number 1, the absent product owner. The obvious one, of course, is that the product owner is not available. There may be plenty of reasons for that. No matter what the reasons are, it's always the same outcome. It means that there will be no feedback to developers during the sprint, which might increase the risk of not meeting the sprint goal. The best product backlog refinement shall not answer all the questions in advance that might come up, because then again, I mentioned it a few seconds ago, you may be running into some kind of upfront planning and large requirement documents in the hope that those will explain whatever might be coming up. It's never going to work this way. That would be way too granular to actually make it compatible with Scrum. It's all about the real-time collaboration between the product owner and the development team. This is really supposed to happen every day, every hour, if the development team needs it. There's another issue with the product owner not being present. Inevitably will lead to a sort of delay of accepting tasks and thus creating an artificial queue, which is seriously a problem if QA is not yet largely automated. So the absent product owner is actually a really nasty issue that you should address. If this is due to sickness, okay, such is life. If this is a permanent absence, you really need to talk to the organization, to your management, and escalate this issue. You need to have a product owner available during the sprint. Number 2, the interfering product owner. It's a myth that you can't change the sprint backlog. You can change it, of course. First of all, it depends on whether the development team agrees to do this. They have sort of a veto right. However, the product owner is not supposed to change the sprint backlog single-handedly. It's always a negotiation. And what we certainly don't want to see is an increase in scope. So you sneak in some kind of ticket into the sprint, and then afterwards as a PO, you increase the scope. This is not how it works. Sometimes, however, there are good reasons for changing the scope of the sprint goal. For example, it needs to be reduced because capacity has been reduced to unexpected sick leave, or a critical bug requires the immediate attention of the team and it's really reducing the number of hours available the team can work on the sprint goal. Probably the team runs into some sort of technical defects and has to figure out, unfortunately, there's more refactoring to do than originally expected. And on the other side, there might also be a chance that there actually is room for doing more. However, this is all not working if the PO is doing this all single-handedly. It's always a sort of negotiation. Number 3, gold plating. The team increases the scope of the sprint by adding unnecessary work to the sprint backlog items. It's also referred to as scope scratching. The issue is that the development team increases or enlarges the task without prior consulting the product owner. This sort of ignorance may result in questionable allocation of resources. And I'd like to share an example with you. Long time ago, almost 10 years ago, we were developing an app and we decided to integrate OpenID as a way to ease the sign-up process. And after the 2 weeks, the developer came back and he showed a magnificent solution for administering several open IDs. So I was stunned because I didn't know what to say. It wasn't mentioned in the ticket. We never talked about that. And I didn't know at the time anyone who had 2 open IDs at the same time and was actively using them. So that was certainly a good example for gold plating and the waste. So the remedy is simple. Developers and the product owner need to talk more often with each other just to make sure that this is not going to happen. If the product owner of a team is not yet co-located with the development team, maybe that's a good idea to think about that. It significantly reduces the chances of these kind of hiccups actually happen. Number 4, board out of date. The development team is not updating tickets on the board in time to reflect the current status. Yes, this is a task of the development team, not of the Scrum Master. And it doesn't matter if it's a physical board or a digital board. The board itself is vital for coordinating the team's work. Transparency is key to inspection and adaptation. Think about the daily Scrum who needs help, for example. And it's also an integral part of the communication of the Scrum team with its stakeholder. A board that it's not up to date will impact the trust the stakeholders have placed in the Scrum team. Try walking in their shoes. How shall they deliver software if they already fail at moving a few stickies? The problem is that this kind of issue may deteriorate the trust the stakeholders have in the team and may result in countermeasures on the side of the stakeholders. The management pendulum might swing back toward traditional methods as a consequence. I like to say the road from Scrum to Prince 2 is paved with abandoned boards. So board out of date, one of my favorites, are the notorious ones. Number 5, undermining flow. The Scrum Master allows stakeholders to disrupt the flow of the development team during the sprint. There are various examples for that. The classic is that the Scrum Master has some sort of laissez-faire policy as far as access to the development team is concerned. I'm not convinced that any kind of communication between stakeholders and developers should be avoided or deferred by the Scrum Master, but it's always a question of how much is tolerable, right? Another example would be that the Scrum Master does not object that the management invites engineers to random meetings as subject matter experts. So basically, they're on paper full-time assigned to the team, and in practice, they may be missing several hours a week. And this is, of course, something that the Scrum Master should address. Another classic way of undermining the flow is that the Scrum Master allows other stakeholders or managers to turn the daily Scrum into some sort of reporting session. This is also not serving the purpose. Preserving the flow of work through the team during the sprint is, I believe, the linchpin of productivity. That's why we have work in progress limits and why they are useful. So avoiding creating artificial queues, for example. Classic is always the code review column on the board. You may remember that. And that's also the reason why the product owner needs to be available at all times. Critical thing about this is that if the Scrum team fails, it's not delivering the sprint goal or is failing during several consecutive sprints, no stakeholder will ever read this kind of what happened during the sprint fine prints. They simply will not be, they simply will ignore this. It will never come up when the discussion about why is the team not delivering is led. So see to it that this is not going to happen. And if the Scrum Master is undermining the flow, please address the issue in the next retrospective. Number 6, no retrospective. Speaking of which, all Scrum events are essential for a team's success. You cannot skip an event. Junior Scrum teams may be tempted to skip retrospectives to buy some more time to meet the sprint goal. A Scrum Master exacting this kind of deal is, I believe, a Scrum Master by title only. Actually, the proposal itself already is a sign how urgent the team needs a retrospective. So no shortcuts of this kind. We're not skipping any kind of events just to probably extend the working hours of the sprint a bit longer. Number 7, a static sprint goal. According to the Scrum guide, the scope may be clarified or renegotiated between the product owner and development team as more is learned. So this means that the sprint goal can either be extended, there is room for more, or could be reduced. So there was over-optimism when picking the stories, or probably the sprint goal can be reached with less effort than originally thought. Other reasons to renegotiate the sprint goal, for example, is that the technology is not working as expected. There are some issues. You run into technical debt, capacity changes. These are all very valid issues to talk about. Do we really need to have the sprint goal as we originally agreed upon? And of course, this is a question of negotiation. Number 8, hardening sprint. The Scrum team decides to have a hardening or cleanup sprint. This is a very simple one. There's no such thing as a hardening sprint in Scrum. Let's revisit for this purpose the Scrum guide. Quality goals do not decrease. So no shortcuts, no cutting corners, no leaving out tests, no nothing. Whatever the team is delivering needs to comply to the definition of done. Otherwise, it's not working. So hardening sprints are commonly a sign of a low grade of adoption of agile principles by the team or the organization. Probably the team is not yet cross-functional. There are a lot of reasons for that. But no matter how you put it, hardening sprints are an absolute no-go. It's one of the worst anti-patterns that you can have. So suggesting a hardening sprint violates core principles of Scrum. And the even worst variation of this is that maybe there's a drop in quality and the team does not tell the product owner, and the product owner believes that the definition of done is matched and the product increment is actually releasable. You will probably run into this at the organization that's very early in the process of using Scrum, when the QA department might be a functional silo and is not yet integrated into the teams. So be prepared for that. Number 9. Variable sprint length. This is not a classic. The team decides to just add a few days to the sprint to make sure that they achieve the sprint goal. In my eyes, this is just another way to cook the agile books. Please remember the goal of the sprint is to deliver working software that delights the customer. It's not about meeting certain metrics that probably are important to the management. I'll suggest that you stop lying to yourself and address the underlying issues. For example, why didn't the sprint outcome meet the sprint goal during the next retrospective? Note, I would not consider a deviating sprint length during the holiday season at the end of the year to be an anti-pattern. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to have 2 crippled sprints over the end of the year and Christmas. So if you combine them to one long sprint, I think this is totally okay. It's pragmatic. Right. Number 10, special forces. A manager assigns specific tasks directly to certain engineers, thus bypassing the product owner, or alternatively, a manager removes an engineer from a team to work on such a task. This behavior does not only violate core Scrum principles, it also indicates that the manager cannot let go and from cannot let go command and control practices. He or she continues to micromanage subordinates, although Scrum would actually allow a different solution to that. Probably the Scrum team can handle this in a completely self-organized manner, as it is supposed to do. Probably if this kind of behavior continues, it signals that the team should address the topic with the higher management and seek support in dealing with that, because this is severely undermining A, the team performance, and B, the team morale, right? It's classic cargo cult. Number 11, everything is a bug. Stakeholders try to speed up delivery of the issues by relabeling tasks as serious bugs. Well, first of all, I have to say, nice try hacking the system. I believe the Scrum Master should address the stakeholders and coach them what useful interactions with the Scrum teams actually are. There might be several reasons for that. Maybe the stakeholders try some local optimization effort. Maybe they have a personal agenda, their bonus is at risk, and they desperately need a certain feature done. Or they have this agile does not apply to me attitude. So there's something better or something different than the rest of the organization. It's not uncommon that people try to sneak stuff in this way. A special case of this is the express lanes for bug fixes or other urgent issues. So if you work in an environment where the software has a certain maturity and a significant part of the team's work is maintenance, it's sometimes recommended that you have a fast lane. And the moment you have a fast lane and stakeholders are aware of that, rest assured they will try to use it in exactly the same way. Then it's no longer a bug, but a small issue. So in one project, we had something that we were defining something that needed to be urgent or small, and small was, I think, 1 or 2 story points. And from one second to another, all the stories were only 1 or 2 story points large. At least the stakeholders tried to explain to us that this was exactly the case. So here again, let me refer to Jocko Willing. Leadership is not what you preach, but what you let slip through. And the Scrum Master should take care of that attitude. Number 12, all hands to the pumps. The management temporarily abandons Scrum in a critical situation. I think this is a classic manifestation of disbelief in agile practices, still fed by some sort of command and control thinking. It's a sort of fine weather sailing, so to speak. Most likely canceling the sprint if the issue is really so serious and critical, and starting a new sprint addressing the issue at hand with the Scrum team then would also solve it. But fine weather sailing is really one of the most frustrating things that can happen. You're working in full swing and then someone says, yeah, we stopped this here. And it's not the product owner, it's someone from the line management. That's really a very unpleasant experience. So let me wrap this up. We started with the absent product owner and the interfering product owner. We then switched to the development team with gold plating and boards that are not kept up to date, to move on to the Scrum Master who's undermining the flow and is skipping events, probably retrospectives. Then we moved on to the Scrum team and stakeholders themselves, starting with static sprint goals, hardening sprints, having variable sprint lengths, assigning issues directly to developers or creating special forces out of the Scrum team. Then we have our stakeholders who try to sneak in new tasks as bugs or as express items. And finally, we address this good weather sailing approach that the moment something critical happens, Scrum is abandoned and some sort of command and control regime takes over.